Welcome to the Transformational Coach podcast with me, Rona Barton, giving you competence with confidence. Hi everybody and welcome to episode 29 of the Transformational Coach podcast. This week we're thinking about self-care. It's the second in our life balance and self-care topic, which is going to take us over this week and probably about the next 3 weeks following this also. Last week we spoke about finding balance. And before we jump into this week's self-care topic, I just wanted to check in and see how you found last week. When you asked yourself those questions about, what areas of your life you needed most balance in right now, how did you go with that? I don't always set homework, but I do set questions for you. And I'm just wondering how you found it, because in relation to this week's topic, I have been having a variety of conversations with clients, with friends, sometimes even random strangers in the supermarket queue, as you do. And I asked somebody, in what ways do you take care of yourself? And I was met with a bit of a blank look, and it seemed to be quite a tricky question. So I'm wondering how I could have worded it differently. And that made me think about what did I ask last week and how could they have been interpreted. So I'm wondering if you've got some hints and tips for me and how I can word my questions in a way that makes it a little easier for you. Okay, with that said, let's move on to this week. Self-care. Do you actually take care of yourself? I'm guessing if we were face to face, you'd be saying to me, yes, or what kind of question is that to ask? Of course I care about myself. But in what ways do you take care of yourself when you are taking care of yourself? That's the question, as I've mentioned, that really stumped the person I was speaking to. And I'm thinking, is it easier to think about what self-care is and what self-care isn't before I ask that question? So with that in mind, what is self-care? Well, for me, self-care is any activity that I deliberately do or take part in that looks after my physical, emotional, mental, spiritual health. So anything that I feel is good for me, that is going to improve my mood, help reduce my stress or anxiety, and allows me to indulge me and, to be me. What self-care isn't, to me, is it's not selfish. It's not about only considering what I need. It's really about knowing that what I need to do to look after me has the knock-on effect to me then being able to invest in and take care of other people. So the long and short of that is, if I don't look after myself, I'm not in a place to be able to give help, support, love, a listening ear, general care to other people either. So where do we start with all of this, and what are you going to do to ensure that you deeply take care of yourself? Well, I am one for sticking to the basics. So finding out what works for me, what I enjoy, and I gave you some of these things last week when I was speaking about finding balance, and being able to look at what helps pull me back into balance. So over time, I have figured out what works for me and what I need to implement. And the way I look at it is, if I make a date with a friend, to go and meet for a cuppa, to go to the cinema, for example, to go out for dinner, all of these fun things that I used to do before COVID came into our lives. But even having time to meet a friend and go for a walk, or to go and see family, I make a date in my diary. I put that time aside, and I view that time as precious, as sacred time, if you like. So it takes a lot for me to then have to be able to contact that person and say, I need to cancel or I need to rearrange, because it's something I'm looking forward to doing. And I don't want to put that off unless there's something major happened. So when it comes to looking after me and my self-care, I look at it like putting a date in the diary for me. And I treat that date the same way as I would going out to meet my friends, going out to spend time with family. I do what I can to ensure it stays in my diary, and I invest in that time. So when I know I've got that time set aside for me, I look forward to it. I get excited about it. And I know that once I've had that time to myself, with myself, to look after me, I am in a better frame of mind to go out and look after other people, or check in with other people, or just spend time around others, because I've managed to replenish a part of me to the point that I have the energy and I have the will to go and be part of somebody else's social circle. So I do like to emphasise taking care of yourself. Now, I know at the moment a lot of people are working from home and they're working remotely, so putting a date in the diary for yourself maybe doesn't involve going out and about. Perhaps that involves just taking the time, if you love cooking, taking the time to create something in your kitchen that you can then indulge in, whether that's you yourself or you with family or you with friends. But what about your professional self-care? What about your work life as well? One of the things that I've mentioned before is that with life moving online to a virtual workspace, it can be quite draining from an energy point of view and a mental point of view. You're on lots of these video calls or internet voice calls. It can really be draining. So what are you doing to help support your professional self-care? Some of the things that can be useful are to, for example, set up a peer support group. So have time with the people that you would normally engage with face-to-face. Set that time aside, perhaps in a separate kind of group, for example, a WhatsApp messaging group where you can, yes, share work issues, but also, indulge in some of the sort of kitchen coffee break chit chat that you would normally do had you been face to face in an office. But also don't forget about setting boundaries for yourself, and we do have a topic coming up in a couple of weeks about setting boundaries, but ensuring that you've got some clear cut-off times between work life and personal life. And what about your mental health, your psychological self-care? What are you doing for that? Think about what needs most attention from you. Is it your physical health? Is it your relationships? Is it your mental health? What is it? And when it comes to looking after your psychological health, your mental health, small things like making time for relaxation, time to engage with positive friends and family, or even keeping the likes of a reflective diary, a reflective journal, can go a long way to helping clear your head and being able to think about the challenges that have come up for you. So what self-care activities do you most enjoy? And of those you currently do, which are the easiest? Which give you the greatest positive impact? And how can you bring more of that into your life? Take some time to really think about and even create your own self-care plan. As I say, put a date in your diary, be that a physical notebook or an online application, an online calendar, for example. Put a reminder in it so that you have time to plan. Pick something you're going to do to fill that time, something that you enjoy and that supports your well-being. Make it a regular habit. And reassess over time, whether it's over a couple of weeks or over a couple of months, as to how that is working for you. Also, take the opportunity now to think about what might get in the way of this self-care plan that you're creating, and what can you do to mitigate those risks? What can you put in place to help remove those barriers? Or what can you do to adjust your strategy? If you can't actually remove the barriers, how can you work around it? Lots of things to think about when it comes to self-care. So take some time. I'll pop some of these questions in the show notes, as ever. And if you want some space to really talk through and think about what works for you, don't forget, you can reach out to me to set up a free, no obligation discovery call where we can really give you a chance to air what's on your mind and see how coaching could help you work through that. My contact details, as ever, are in the show notes as well, and at the top of the podcast social media page. In the meantime, please look after yourselves, and I'll be back next week when we'll be thinking about the value of fun. So take some time to work on these questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.